This morning, I'm reading the Ghanaian newspapers, and one of the headlines that caught my attention was that Tinubu has broken the 8. And I was wondering why anybody would have that as headline if the intention is not to draw parallels with Ghana and the upcoming elections in 2024. Let me say with emphasis, and very serious emphasis, that what has happened in Nigeria would not be tolerated in Ghana in 2024. I mean, I've seen shocking videos of voters being shot at polling stations, like happened in Ayawaso West, Wogon. I've seen videos of uniformed security personnel snatching ballot boxes. I've seen videos of old women being taught how to thumbprint for particular candidates and so on. These are obviously illegal and unconstitutional acts. And if anybody is dreaming about breaking the 8 with these kinds of methods, let me assure them that there will be massive resistance against this fraud. It won't happen in Ghana. So those who have started celebrating on the front pages about how to break the 8 and so on, they ought to be careful. If at the end of our elections, the people of Ghana genuinely and freely vote for Alan Chemati, we will have to live with it. If at the end of the elections, the people of Ghana genuinely and truly vote for Adainimo, we will live with it. If they vote for Boachie Ajaku, we will live with it. And if they freely and truly vote for John Mahama, we will live with it. But any shenanigans, like has happened in Nigeria, cannot lead to breaking the 8 in Ghana. And this message must be loud and clear for everybody. I've lived in this country, and I can say on authority that I'm one of the many Ghanaians who made tremendous sacrifices to bring us here. We didn't make those sacrifices to condone this level of illegality and recklessness. We didn't make those sacrifices so that people can break the 8 Nigerian style. And it ain't gonna happen. And I'm very sure about that. Only last week, I had a conversation with Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, who worked with us in the agitations which have brought us here. And he told me that even in his advanced age, he's not hanging his boots yet. And that this country has to be built on purely democratic, ethos. That the people of this country must always have a say, true, genuine say, in who governs them and who does not govern them. And I'm sure that Dr. Nyaho's sentiments are shared by many others who participated in those struggles. So break the 8 if we want, but not the Nigerian style. It will not happen. We would not allow it to happen. There are so many people who would not allow that to happen. Now, I'm looking at the results of the elections. And one thing is striking. You have a situation where journalists and so on are referring to Obi as a youth, as a young person, and so on. And I'm asking myself, what happened to Africa? 61-year-old, young youth? What happened to Africa? I mean, this guy is due for retirement. I mean, he's reached the retiring age. So if we begin to refer to people who have reached the retiring age as young people, as youth, and so on, then something must be wrong. You understand? I'm one person who does not believe that age is a necessary criteria for participating in the governance of institutions and countries and so on. Because I've seen very young people who are extremely stupid. I've seen very young people. I mean, youth does not give you wisdom and so on. I've seen many young people who are extremely stupid. And I've seen very old people who are I've seen very old people who are not worth anything, who can't think, who don't have the basic attitudes that are required for effective governance. You understand? So for me, the issue is not one's age. It's not one's age. One's age is not everything. I mean, we've seen people in government who are very old who have messed up our country. And we've seen younger people who have also messed up our country. And we can cite all the examples and so on. So for me, age is not a criteria. But certainly a 61-year-old is not a young person by any standard. I mean, if you look at, what is that called? If you look at the statistics, about the ages at which Africans are dying and so on, 61 is certainly not young, and Obi is not a young person. Yes, there is some speculation that a lot of young people were rooting for him. Maybe that is true. I haven't seen the empirical evidence. There's no empirical evidence. But let us assume that it was true. What is true about Obi is that he appears to have excited a lot of people. Nobody gave him a dog's chance. Yeah. And for him to get 6-point-something million of the votes and to place third is a remarkable achievement. But how then do you move from there to the conclusion that young people voted for him? Do you know who voted for him? The voting system is such that you would not know who voted for who. So that's an assumption which is not verifiable. Now, the other thing which is also interesting is that this is one of the lowest turnouts, if not the lowest turnout, in Nigerian elections. Yeah. Now, that can only be an indication that more and more people are beginning to lose hope in this bourgeois democratic process. It is not deliberate. Every 4 years, in some cases 5 years, Africans go to the polls to elect leaders. And their conditions of life do not change at all. In fact, they get worse all the time. The democratic process must deliver its intended goals, and its intended goals are better living conditions. Its intended goals ought to be improved access to social services like education, health, housing, and so on. If the democratic process does not deliver, does not satisfy the aspirations of the people, it's a useless process and the people will continue to reject it. And what has happened in Nigeria is perhaps the clearest indication that the Nigerian population is getting increasingly worried about the inability of bourgeois democracy, to deliver its intended goals and so on. Now, you compare the apparent lack of enthusiasm about the Nigerian elections with the massive enthusiasm which is being generated in other West African countries which have not toed the path of bourgeois democracy. Mali is an example. Guinea is an example. The millions of people who have declared, faith in the military governments which have assumed power, through mass protests, through street demonstrations and so on, it's a significant thing. It's something which is worthy of note. What the people of Africa want, like all peoples everywhere in the world, is for them to have a say. It's for their votes to matter in elections. And it is for them to be able to harness their resources to resolve the hydra-headed problems which confront them. I mean, just going to put papers in the ballot box does not answer the problems that we confront the African people. And I want anybody to challenge me on that. We can have a debate on that. So, yes, a lot of people are losing interest, in the ballot box. I do know that many Ghanaian politicians have told us that under all circumstances, and they insist that under all circumstances, the ballot box is preferable to other means of attaining power. Perhaps these politicians do not know the history of the world. If they knew the history of the world, they would understand that Hitler came to power through the ballot box. Hitler was popularly and democratically elected by Germans. And look at what he did to Germany and did to the world. So the ballot box does not always deliver, leaders who live or pursue the aspirations of our people. Hitler is one example, and we can go on and on and on and on. I mean, 6 years ago, this country elected the New Patriotic Party. Go into the street and ask the people who voted for the New Patriotic Party whether they are happy with the choices that they made. I'm not going to make any statement on that. But you take a camera and go into the streets and ask the people who voted for the New Patriotic Party whether indeed they are happy with the outcome, and judge from that result. So the ballot box does not always produce the best. Forget even best. It does not always produce good outcomes, and we've got to realize that. So our focus must be entirely on achieving the objectives of the independence movement. And the objectives of the independence movement are subscribed to by all Africans who wish themselves well and who want to see Africa play a decisive role in international affairs. What are these objectives? One, that we, the people of Africa, should be able to determine our own path to development. Two, that we, the people of Africa, should be able to elect our own leaders, and that our leaders should not be imposed upon us by the Buckingham Palace. Three, that we should own our own resources. And four, that these resources must be exploited for our own benefit. If the bourgeois multi-party dispensation is able to deliver that, so be it. If it's unable to deliver that, people will seek other means of achieving those objectives which are crucial for our survival as African people, as citizens of this world. There are indications that some of the losing parties, especially the Labour Party of Obi and the traditional opposition party and so on, may be going to court. The historical record indicates that even though all of us appear to have accepted the court as the final arbiter in these disputes, some of the decisions of our courts throughout the world have not measured up to any standards of decency and truth. Some of the decisions of the courts, you understand? So that is what we have elected for ourselves. We have accepted constitutions which say that the judiciary ultimately is the final arbiter in these disputes. Let's see what will happen in Nigeria.